Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Sikorsky and I am the Interactive Campaigns Manager here at Percussion. I will be helping out during the course of the presentation. Just so everybody knows, this webinar will be recorded and available on videos and webinars at percussion.com. So if you want to review it at a later time. So today's webinar will be presented by Aaron Dunn, our VP of Marketing and Strategy here at Percussion Software. Aaron will be discussing SEO best practices as it relates to new Google search. The webinar should last about 40 to 45 minutes. We will leave the last 10 to 15 minutes open to field some questions. So during the presentation, feel free to type your questions in the chat window, and we will try to get all or to as many of them as possible. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Aaron Dunn.
Thanks, Karen. Welcome, everybody. We're really excited to connect with you all. This has been probably one of our most popular webinars to date. So we feel like we definitely this is an issue that a lot of you are trying to grapple with. As Karen mentioned, feel free to pose your questions throughout, and we will work hard to address them at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Great. So first, a quick word about Percussion. We work and have worked for many years with many of the leading brands on the web today, from weather.com to autotrader.com to vegas.com, and certainly some large government agencies as well, and government sites like usa.gov and mass.gov. We are helping them build their web experiences and drive their businesses online. And to do that, we provide a highly usable, flexible, and affordable software product for web content management and content marketing. Our products enable you to reach your online goals by removing the roadblocks that are typically associated with getting your content and and enabling your content strategy online. You can learn more about Percussion at www.percussion.com, and of course, you can follow us on Twitter @Percussion. So why are we here today? Why is a software company in the content management and content marketing space talking about search anyway? This is something that we have kept a close eye on over the years. It's definitely an issue that's changing rapidly. I mean, we really over the last 12 months have begun to see SEO becoming more and more of a content problem, or probably more accurately, a content opportunity. As many of you know, Google makes hundreds of changes a year, and they can be very difficult to keep up with. Some changes go unnoticed. The daily ones that they don't even announce, you probably don't even know, they have zero impact on you. But there have been others, some of them very notable, that actually have a substantial impact on you and your business and how you achieve your goals online. About 15 months ago, we noticed some very interesting things happening, as I'm sure many of you did too. And we were tracking a number of updates over the last 15 months that, again, taken individually, they were meaningful in their own right, but when taken together with the benefit of hindsight, the results really have been transformative, and we'll get into some of those here in a second. You know, I think it's important. We're all familiar with search engine optimization over the last decade or so, particularly with Google, and for some of us before that, with the other search engines that came before. But Google's mission has always been to deliver the best results for you based on whatever it is you're searching on. And by best, again, they mean the most relevant. So whatever it is that you're searching on based on prior search histories, what you're likely to want to see, they want to deliver the most relevant items to you. And that's exactly how they monetize their traffic and their business, and that's no secret. Also no secret, of course, is that throughout the years, people try to game the system, if you will, and they've been affectionately come to be known as Black Hat SEO, and there's certainly a number of tips and tricks that people have tried to use over the years. Google keeps a very close eye on these because, again, it runs counter to their mission of delivering the best results. And they've made some very obvious changes over the years to defeat those different tricks. Google at the same time has always said that if you focus on delivering high quality content, then they will take care of the rest and make sure that that content gets delivered and shows up in the most appropriate way possible. As I mentioned earlier, over the course of the past year or so, we've seen really 6 major changes that in total are having a pretty dramatic impact on search engine optimization, and how we as search marketers, web marketers, and content marketers need to think about search and what that means, and how you get found on the web, and how you drive your business online. Again, individually, some of them are more important than others, but taken in their entirety, they have a pretty amazing impact. So we're going to go through the 6 that we're tracking right now, and a little bit of detail on them. The first, many of you must be familiar with, was Panda from February of 2011. You may not know that it was originally named Farmer, because it was targeted at the so-called content farms, sites that exist solely to catch traffic and then themselves monetize that traffic using pay-per-click strategies. At the time, much was written about what it would mean and its impact. Some estimates by Google and others suggested about 12% of web traffic would be impacted when web search traffic. A number of major and certainly high-profile sites, flat out shut down. Others like eHow and Mahalo refocused their business and changed strategies slightly. But for more mainstream marketers, it actually had a different impact, which is a number of organizations were thinking about microsite strategies to help improve their SEO. Their main .com presence, for lots of different reasons, wasn't going to be able to perform in the vast long tail of search that they were looking to target. So by creating a number of microsites, they could use those target sites to bring traffic to the main site. We actually had a client at the time, late in 2010, who was about to embark on a microsite strategy in the order of about 1,000 or 1,500 sites, that were very specific and very targeted. And within about a day of understanding what Panda meant, they just killed that strategy and walked away to do something different as it relates to search. The second major change from June of last year was the launch of Google+. Now, certainly at the time, it was mostly seen simply as a shot at Facebook, and still is, of course. So there was 2 major points of differentiation that quickly rose to the top. One was the notion of circles and being able to post content and really striate your community, something which, by the way, Facebook quickly copied. And the other one, which was more certainly deeper as part of Google itself, was the connection to the search algorithm. So Google Search would index your post traffic and include that in search results. Again, its real impact wasn't felt until earlier this year, and we'll come to that in a minute. But clearly, Google needed to dent Facebook somehow, and we can argue about how successful they've been with that. But certainly, they had a few tricks up their sleeve as well. The third major change from October of 2011 was focused on search encryption. At the time, Google announced that they would start, if you were logged into Google, they would start hiding your search queries from the referring sites that you visited after having made a search. So if you search on web content management and you wind up at Percussion.com, we wouldn't necessarily see what you searched on to come to our site. At the time, there was and still remains some speculation that this was a move to begin to split and create a premium offering for Google Analytics. And certainly that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it still will. And also, of course, pay-per-click advertisers still receive the full information. For search marketers, this is a pretty big hole. There was some very varied estimates over time about how many people would be logged in at any given time and hide the search. I can tell you for Percussion, we've been running right about 30%. So about 30% of our organic traffic are now showing up as blocked or hidden. So we see that we got X number of hits, but we don't know what that search traffic was. And that's a pretty big gap. If you're tracking traffic and you're tracking conversion down to the keyword level, missing out on 30% of that, it can be it's meaningful in your overall context. The fourth major change from November of 2011 was around what was called caffeine, which was around the freshness update. And so at that time, they started to say that for news content, related content, if you were searching on a particular topic, let's say the Olympics, they were going to show you content from that was related to the Olympics in 2012, not necessarily the Olympics from 1980, thinking that you would want to see the more recent content first. Clearly, as it relates to news, a public benefit. Most people, unless they're searching, they have a very specific and very well-defined search. And a casual searcher would be certainly looking for the more recent content. At the same time, as this migrated out to beyond news to all content, a number of sites that had big overhangs of stale content that hadn't been changed really saw a big hit in their organic traffic. Sites like Radio Shack, a couple of agencies, both within state agencies within New York and New Jersey, also were reported as having some pretty substantial drop-offs in traffic. And certainly for us as search marketers, the size of your team, I know that if you have a smaller team, you're more apt to focus on what's happening in the moment. So you'll optimize a page and then forget about it for a while. And as that content becomes more and more stale, it's going to have negative impacts on your search results, your search traffic. The fifth change, and we haven't even gotten through a full year yet, right? We're in January of 2012 when this was launched, and that it's only 11 months after the first one, was Search Plus Your World. And so this was, now we got to see what the power of Google Plus in the search, including search in the algorithm, including posts from your communities in the search algorithm can really come into play. And this has given rise to this concept of personalized search, which we're starting to hear more and more people talk about. And fundamentally, my results are not your results. If I search again on web content management, Percussion is going to come up, 5th or 6th. For you, if you're logged into Google and part of our community, maybe it's 10th or 11th. If you've never heard of us before, we're probably somewhere around 18, 19, and that's the result of all the hard work that we've been doing. But it's very difficult to understand and see and generate trends when you have a large percentage of your traffic that sees something completely different than you see, and has a wide swing based on their own communities. It's important to realize also that if you're trying to measure the impact of your search based on page 1 rankings, you really need to start asking yourself, page 1 for who and for whom. It can become a big challenge for you. So again, now you're seeing, people are seeing when they're logged into a Google account, they're starting to see posts from their friends, posts from their community show up near the top of search. And this has really become a clear signal to all of us marketers that we really need to be thinking about our community strategy and really thinking about Google Plus specifically if you haven't already. The sixth change just happened. Actually, if we had done this webinar a month and a half ago when we first started conceiving of it, we would have only been giving a signal that we think there's something coming. But since that time, the Penguin update came out, and really this is a clear shot at web spam, which Google defines as black hat SEO. People who are simply trying to gain the results for their own benefit. It is squarely targeted at keyword stuffing techniques and as they call it, unusual linking and linking strategies for both internal and external links. We would call that good old-fashioned black hat there. The examples that Google posted on their blog about these different changes were pretty cut and dried. Hopefully nobody on this call does any of those techniques. However, it's a cautionary tale because as we've seen with all these other changes, major changes that Google has made, Panda and search, SSL, secure search, and a few others, oftentimes, the good guys get whacked as well. And so, you might look at that and say, well, don't we do that? I mean, isn't that part of our strategy to write, good content and use a lot of keywords? And the answer, of course, is you're not doing it in what Google's trying to stop. But you should pay very close attention to make sure that you're not accidentally either crossing the line or Google you need to tweak their algorithm a little bit to make sure that that good, clean sites, good, clean content don't get caught up in this. So this is one we're going to watch very carefully, but it could have the impact of penalizing sites that are over SEO'd and even sites that are over SEO'd for good reason. So those are the 6 major changes, like I said, that we've been tracking. And what what that's really done is, if you can distill it down to 4 habits that you've been used to really for the last 10 years of SEO strategy, if you will, they really have these 4 old habits. I don't want to say they've gone out of the window completely, but you really need to rethink them and rethink about what they mean for you. Certainly page 1 rankings are important, but within the era of personalized search, you definitely need to be thinking about what that really means. Certainly optimizing page by page is important, but don't forget the content that's been sitting out in the wind, if you will, for a while. Your keywords, of course, are still important, but be careful on how you stuff. And you really need to be thinking about your social sites as an extension of your corporate presence. Also, I can't underscore enough the importance of personalized search and what that means as it relates to tracking rankings. The other thing that Google did separate from search over the last few months is they switched to a single sign-on for all Google properties, right? So it used to be you sign into Google+, you sign into Gmail, you sign into YouTube, you sign into pay-per-click, you sign into Google Analytics, Webmaster Tools. Now it's a single sign-on. So we expect that the number and volume of people who are searching while signed into Google will actually go up pretty dramatically in the next 6 months. And we'll probably start to see that already start to happen. So all those things that only matter if you're signed in will affect an even larger number, an even bigger number of people. And yes, you can log out yourself out of Google, and you can see, quote unquote, natively what does it look like, what does the search result look like when you're not logged in. But keep in mind that Google does still tailor search based on your previous search histories, but also if 30 or 40% of web traffic is actually logged in at any given time, that's a pretty major component of the site, of your site traffic. So that all sounds pretty gloom and doom, and you're probably asking yourself, and probably are asking, which the reason you're on this call is because you're wondering, what do I do now? I feel a little lost. I'm not really sure where to go. So don't despair, of course. We know there are things you can do, and some of you have already probably started doing some of these. So we've distilled it down to 5 things that we think you should be doing right now, and we'll dig into those right now and try and make them as actionable as possible for you. So when you end this call, get back to your desk and are inundated with a number of your daily tasks, you can have a few things to take away from you. So the first thing is you need to write content far more frequently than you ever thought possible. You need more content, you need more channels, you need to be posting more frequently than ever before. And you really, as I mentioned, you really need to be thinking about your website properties, your social properties, and your affiliates holistically. You need to be very focused on what kind of roadblocks you have. You need to be thinking about who owns content. We've heard people talking about a chief content officer, thinking about corporate editorial calendars, the notion that everybody is a publisher and needs to be acting like a magazine. Is certainly foreign to many of us in the B2B marketing world, unless you're an online news site. You really need to be thinking in these terms, because that is what's going to get you ranked highly around your topics and around your topics of interest and around your thought leadership and around your brand. If you have technology roadblocks, this is something that we run into quite a bit, where companies are have a really hard time based on the technology that's in place. That's certainly something that a company like Percussion can help you with. But really, you need to be looking at not only the technology, but also the processes that you have in place. How are you tracking that content, and also the people that you have writing that content? And that really drives into the second step here, which is to scale the number of content contributors. You're not going to be able to scale your content to the level that you need, with your team today. Obviously, if you're blessed, with a team of 100 people writing, daily, then that's great. There's certainly some companies out there that are doing that. But the really innovative companies have found a way to engage the community and get the community to write content for them as well. So that's both external to the company, but it's also, within your company, getting more and more people to touch your, not just your site, but your entire web presence. Maybe you don't need a chief content officer depending on your business, but you've got to be thinking about that content. You've got to be thinking about that content holistically, managing your EdCal and have a strategic eye on that content ball, or you're going to suffer. And we've already started to see that in some cases. The third step is, and I apologize for the stale bread, sort of a whimsical moment, I guess, as I was putting these together, but your old content is now hurting you. It used to be that your old content was just sort of a pain to manage, but now it actually has an impact in hurting you as it relates to your SEO rankings and how people are finding you. If it's old, you need to throw it out, or better yet, you need to find a way to update it. Again, Google's rewarding you for fresh content, fresh relevant content, and they're penalizing you for a big overhang of stale content. We hear from companies all the time when they come to us, to purchase our software or deploy a new website, and they say, "Look, I've got 5, 6, 7,000 or 500 pages, and I'm not going to migrate all of those pages to the new structure. I'm going to cut that down from 5,000 to 2,000." You really shouldn't wait for whatever date in the future you're thinking you're going to do that. You need to, it's like to say, go into the deep, dark nooks and crannies of your content and figure out what's good, figure out what should be updated, and find a way to jettison the rest. I know for some companies who have to maintain that large backlog and overhang for compliance or for other reasons, there's certainly ways to handle that content in a way that updates it and keeps it fresh without running afoul of the caffeine update. So again, clear out your old stale stuff, find ways to refresh that, and keep moving forward with new content. Step 4, not surprising, you've heard this one before, is engaging with your social community. The term we use here is you've got to get outside the 4 walls of your own website. If you are thinking simply in terms of I got a corporate.com, or maybe I've got a corporate site with a few additional sites, or I'm a college where I've got just a number of department sites, that's fantastic. That's a good approach to think about your content holistically across those properties. But you now need to start to think about your community, your social channels, Google+, Facebook, Pinterest if you're involved in Pinterest, your own end user community, your constituents, your students if you're a college, and you need to find a way to build and tap into that community. The more people that are around you and engage with your content, and engage with your brand, the better things will be. Not surprisingly, you need to get on Google+. I'm a technology laggard in some of these areas, but it's pretty obvious to us that we're not exactly sure ultimately how it's going to work out. Not sure anybody today expects Google+ to overtake Facebook. I'm sure they'll probably find their own niches. It sounds like Microsoft is taking another run at this space, or maybe more at Pinterest with social, I think they call it. I'm not sure if we did a virtual show of hands, I would guess that probably 30 or 40% of you are currently have some sort of a presence on Google+. You probably all should be there by tomorrow if you can, if for no other reason to help maintain and manage and grow your search rankings. And lastly, the 5th step here is really around telling a compelling story. Good content marketing, which is rapidly blending into good search engine optimization, which is blended into good advertising, which is blended into good public relations. Saw an interesting thread about his PR, content marketing, and vice versa. At the end of the day, you need to have a good story. There's some fantastic work being done at the Content Marketing Institute, and for those of you who know Robert Rose, he's doing some great writing and telling good stories as well. The ad agencies of the world are probably rolling their eyes a little bit, saying, "Hey, we've been in this for a while." But the nature of how you tell a story and how you communicate that story is never more important as it has been now. And again, telling that story not only across your branded sites, but also out in your communities. And if you use that story and that community to build engagement with you, that's going to equal great SEO. Remember, Google's essential charge to us as marketers and content marketers is just worry about good content. We'll take care of the rest. It's a little passive, of course, but it really will carry the day. So as we come back to that chart, our old habits, and take another look at it, and they call it new habits for highly successful SEO. Distilling these down, you have 5 things to do and 4 new habits. One is, of course, to focus on your core topics. Page 1 rankings are important, don't get me wrong, but what that means has changed, I think, forever, and certainly, quite dramatically. You need to get your content out in more channels. You need to be doing it faster than ever before. Again, the old mantra of good, well-formed content remains, true today more than ever. And you can't be thinking about social as a silo. You really need to be thinking about your content holistically, getting it out across all of your platforms and engaging your community. As we were putting this together in our conversations here internally, we realized that for a lot of you, you're struggling with, what do we write about? I know that I need to write more, I need to do more, I need to tell a better story, but aside from that, how do I keep up and how do I drive the volume? So bonus tip for you, a couple of ideas in terms of how you can look for areas and look for ways to expand your content, scale your contributors, and find good topics to write about. Some of you are doing these things already, so this is good. For others of you, this hopefully will be some actions for you. First and foremost, of course, is listen to your community. If you're engaged with the communities in which you sell into and the communities that you engage with frequently, then understand what their pains are and what their topics are, not unlike how we came up with the idea of doing this webinar. We know this is an issue that people are grappling with. We're certainly grappling with it ourselves. And when you do that, and if you can do it in an authentic way that's relevant to both you and them, it's a great source for content. People always love best practices, for sure. How can I do something? How can I make my life, make my job easier, or expand, extend what we're doing? And the other thing that I think a lot of people do, some people do effectively, is listening in on their support calls. So when your customers or your constituents or your students engage with you, what are they expressing as either challenges or even problems, and how do you turn those into opportunities for best practices and content that will really engage with your communities? So that's the bonus tip for the day. Probably have a few others that we can come up with as we go through this process, but really the other thing as we begin to close this and wind this down a little bit is there's always more. This is from just a couple days ago, I guess last week. Google talking about how they are going to revamp search and the search results, and how the page is displayed. And I've already started to see this myself. Some of you may have as well. People and images on the right. News up top. Community content at the very top. Which is giving pay-per-click advertisers a bit of a challenge to think about where their ad is going to show up. But certainly changes are frequent. If you saw from the SEO Mods site, the image screenshot I showed you right in the beginning of these slides, Google's making hundreds of changes a year, and they don't tell you about all of them. They obviously are picking and choosing about how they want to communicate these things. So just when you think you've got it all figured out, I hate to tell you it's going to keep changing out from under you. That relates to both Google, but also, of course, our web experiences. Again, Google Plus is just not even a year old yet. Pinterest, I don't know anybody who's talking about Pinterest back in December of last year, and now it's the hottest thing on the planet. So things are moving rapidly, so you need to keep moving. And the biggest thing I can leave you with, I hope, is to be flexible, stay abreast of what's happening, and really work on being be flexible in your processes, but also be agile in terms of how you are going about solving some of these challenges. So what's going to work today? Test it. If it doesn't work, move on. Don't get yourself locked into too many situations that put you in a box that you can't get out of. Last thing I just want to say is we've been really focused on Google, and then I'm going to turn it over to your questions, because it looks like we've got some great questions here. This is all about Google. The Bing Bing. Some of you may ask, well, what about Bing and other search engines, if you will, mobile search engines, mobile search tools? And the reality of it is that Google is still the granddaddy of them all and is going to be for the foreseeable future. I looked up Search Engine Watch in February of 2012 using their own analysis as well as comScore's analysis. Google had about 66.4% of the market. Microsoft has actually taken over the second slot from Yahoo. We've certainly seen Yahoo falter in recent months. I may be the last person on the planet who still has a Yahoo personal email address, but I may have to update that soon, apparently. But Microsoft comes in second at 15.3%, and Yahoo at 13.8%. So I'm sure Microsoft is excited to have overtaken Yahoo, but let's be real. They've got a long way to go to even make a meaningful dent in what Google is doing. I think that the more likely challenge is going to be from searches that are performed on mobile, and I think that mobile browsers, mobile search tools, given Google's focus, given the acquisition of Motorola Mobility, which is a device-related play, but certainly will play here as well, I don't think this dynamic is going to change anytime soon. So with that, Karen, we have a large number of questions here, so I'd like to take a minute to go through a few of them and take the last 15, 20 minutes or so on that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Aaron. During the presentation, so we had a number of questions, so let's take some time and go through them. So regarding, well, the first one, regarding personalized search, if I log out of Google, won't I see natural results?
So if you log out of Google, you will see natural results for sure. And that is natural to you. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you see that's still somewhat tailored based on your search history, where you're based, perhaps. There's a lot of they've been doing a lot of work in terms of localizing that search as well. Localizing means many different things, but in the context of this, if you're looking for a plumber, they're going to show you a plumber in the town in which you live, not necessarily in the UK. But again, as we're in the space right now where we're running around 30% of folks who are logged in using one of their Google accounts, that's going to start to trend more and more and more. So let's say we had 40% of you were logged in and 60% were not. That right there is going to start to create a difference. So even though I might log out and see quote unquote a natural search without the personalization, you're still going to be limited in what your visitors see, because so many of them are now seeing a personalized search experience.
Okay, so the next question. Currently on Google+, how do I really optimize that for search?
Yeah, that's something that I think everybody's still figuring out. What we've been doing, and certainly I would hardly call us an expert because we're testing just like you are. But certainly some of the bigger brands, have been working really hard at this. And the first thing is of course be true to who you are and engage with your community authentically. But following people who are in your community, who have profiles and expanding your circles, if you will. And then sharing relevant content. So making sure that you've got content that is important or relevant to your industry and to your brand. And it's not just sharing content that obviously sharing your blog post is important, sharing your image is important, maybe on Pinterest. But as it relates to adding comments and adding content to Google Plus that you would normally be using to optimize your corporate site. Can be very, very impactful as well. I mean, like I said, once we really made a commitment to Google Plus, we instantly saw a pretty substantial increase in our organic traffic driven from that.
Okay, so the next question regarding stale content on static HTML pages. If we just update small chunks of content, does Google Spider catch that and consider it newer?
I think that's still something that we're going to need to find out as this thing evolves. We're going at it from the perspective of it'd be a combination of metadata as well as some new content. So I mean, just changing the date probably isn't gonna do as much as actually getting in and reforming the header content. And then really, I think it'll be based on your strategy and how much time you have. I mean, certainly going through and changing the date, I think Google will pretty much figure out that somebody created an algorithm to do that. We think it's going to be more about thinking about those pages and changing the date, yes, updating some of the meta information, but really attacking that header, the top third of the page, if you will, top 3 paragraphs or the H1 tag, and making it more relevant for today. Now, I mean, the good news is you probably should be doing that anyway, just as good content strategy. If it's that old that it's being penalized, you should really be looking at it from how can you update it, how can you freshen it.
All right, the next question. Can you give me an example of overstuffing?
Well, Google gave us some very nice examples of this on their website, and I can include a link actually in the follow-up to this on their content their algorithm change blog. And the examples they gave are incredibly obvious. So rather than a nice neat paragraph that you or I could read, it's the equivalent of using the Adobe fill text, fill with dummy text, lorem ipsum kind of thing, where there's a sentence and then it has a 10-word sentence, but they expand it to 100 words of keywords to drive traffic. So those are the egregious examples. I would expect that none of us are actually doing that today. What I think would be the thing that we need to keep an eye on is where we were all taught, I think, a few years ago to make sure that you jam that first paragraph with as much key content as possible. Again, if you take the mantra that write good content that's topical and relevant and fresh, you're probably going to be fine. If you write a very complex 35-word sentence that takes your 4 keywords and uses them 8 times, you're probably going to be at risk. But like I said, this just came out, so I think we're gonna have to see how that plays out over time.
Okay, so the next question: for a B2B company, other than press releases, where can you really alter your content? We try and incorporate new survey results, but our product pages don't really change. Where can we create additional content?
Yeah, I think that press releases are good, though they have limitations. You need to have something interesting to write about for a press release to make sense. Blogging, obviously. I mean, blogging feels, as I like to joke around here, it's 2005, and yet, as we found, a lot of people aren't actively blogging yet. And that can be a really great way to talk about things that are relevant to you and to your industry, without too heavy of a sales pitch. We think that also in your, depending on what kind of company you are, or if you're, how you think about your communities, if you're a college or a government agency, there is a lot of interesting things that can be added there. So if you're a software company, of course, new how-tos, new interesting information about how you might use your software and you might use your products is a great place to work within. Issues, thought leadership. It used to be, write a white paper and 8 pages long or 12 pages long and post it behind the download screen, the download login form. We're starting to see, folks take that content and rather than having a 12-page white paper that's a download as a PDF, take the key elements of that and grabbing that as page content and giving people that experience more in a live way. Case studies is another area. If you get interesting user stories that you want to tell, Or, again, for colleges, people stories. So being able to, talk about your students or talk about your the experience of being a student at those schools. For government agencies, talking a little bit more of a challenge, but talking about things that are relevant to your constituents are all great places to go.
Okay, the next question. Regarding step 1, write valuable content more frequently. I work for higher ed, and our site requires stakeholder content, so I have to ask, what is valuable content? Who deems that? Organizations? Viewers?
Yeah, I think you can really extend, that's a great question. You can really extend that beyond EDU. I don't think higher ed is the only people facing this challenge. I think in our experience, certainly a lot of institutions, higher ed institutions and government agencies may have more process around that and more stakeholders than, say, a smaller B2B software company. But, we would argue that the people that's going to determine if your content is valuable enough or highly valuable content is really your end users, whoever your end users are. So your students, the people you're trying to reach with your website, they're the ones who are going to judge. I mean, we all have our opinion about what's great content, but if we're not listening to our community to understand what they want to hear about, then we're missing a pretty big opportunity to tailor and engage. So, for example, if you, I'm not going to pick on the college I went to, so I'll just move more in the generic. If, we all get excited about particular topics, and it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, we think this is going to be great. It's really interesting. Everybody wants to hear about it because we know that our product or our school or our agency has the best answer to whatever this is. But if we're doing that in a vacuum, if we think we know and we're not engaged with our community and getting the feedback from them about what they're interested in, history is littered with huge mismatches in this regard. And there's a balance, of course. I mean, focus groups will only tell you so much. But understanding the cues, thinking about what they want to hear about, and then testing it, right? So being flexible enough to go down a particular path, a particular theme, thinking about what is the most relevant and interesting content for them, and if no one's engaging with it, understanding why is that? Is that because it's not very good content, they don't care about it, or is it because you're not promoting it the right way? I think where you have a number of stakeholders involved, that can be more of a challenge. But again, there's a great sense of urgency right now, I think, when you look at these changes, that you definitely need to be thinking about doing something a little bit differently, and you can use that business problem as an opportunity to change up your processes and how you go about it. And we're a technology company, so we have a technology bias, but it's as much about process and people as it is about technology.
Okay, so next question. Having the community write content, are you referring to social media or customer views on the site, or both? What else would fall into this category?
Well, I think that it depends on who you are, of course. And there's probably some limitations on, how much user-generated content you want to have, floating around your site. I mean, certainly comments are one thing, but, community reviews are something completely different. I know that, for example, our clients at AutoTrader do a lot of work with, their freelance community, right? And they empower them and get them engaged. But, they're writing about cars, and that may not be easy for everybody to do. So, some of the areas that you can really consider is the LinkedIn groups, for example. Even if you're not, even if you don't have the luxury of having created your own LinkedIn group with 300,000 people in it, if you've got relevant communities to your business focus, being able to post your content in there and get people to comment and engage there. And then mining those people for interesting perspectives and asking them for guest contributions to your blog or even to to other thought leadership areas can be a great way to do that. If you if you have people who have been brand champions or have been thinking about this topic or are thought leaders in their own right in your particular industry, getting them to to share their perspectives either in a LinkedIn group or on your Google Plus page or on your website or on your blog specifically can be very important. I think the one thing that people lose sight of a little bit is because of the way blogs have gotten started and the way content management systems and how websites have been run, the blog is often seen as another silo, hanging off the website, and there's not a lot of sharing of content between the website and the blog. That's actually another huge opportunity where you can see how people are engaging with your content and capture that back into the structure of the site. So we've got a lot of questions here, and just in the interest of time, we'll try and get to maybe 2 more, Karen. We'll do that one.
Okay. Next question. When it comes to blogging as a way to provide this fresh new content and storytelling, from a domain name standpoint, what is the best way to implement a blog in light of these new rules? Should a company establish their blog as a part of their core corporate website's domain, or is it better to establish the blog at a completely different domain name so that the blog becomes yet another incoming link to the core corporate site's domain? Or does it even matter?
Yeah, I think that that answer is probably changing really as we speak. I think a few years ago, you would argue, hey, let's give it its own name, let's give it its own quote-unquote brand, side by side with our brand. I think that, this is my perspective, that, now, given all the changes and given the primacy of the importance of fresh content and making sure that you're posting a lot and posting relevant information, I would absolutely hang that blog off of your corporate site, or one of your properties or your edu domain. Whether that's blog.domainname.com, edu.gov, whatever it is, or .gov.edu.com/your blog. I think there's probably different strategies there based on what you're trying to achieve, and also depending on what tool you're using, for the blog. I think that the key element to this is to be doing it, most importantly, and the second key element is making sure that you're cross-pollinating content. So, if you've got if you're blogging about a particular topic that's relevant and you've got relevant content pages or product pages on your main site, you want to make sure that you're able to bring people from the blog into those other topical areas for more information. Using a classic tag and category structure, when people are searching for a particular topic or interested in a particular topic, you can display content from all of your properties that's relevant to that the thing that somebody's reading. So whether it's a blog post or a press release or a product page on your website or a community post, or in the future even something that's out in your on a social community, you can display all of that material. So part of looking at it, looking at all these communities holistically, we think is to consolidate them under one umbrella, to the extent that it's possible, and also, but most importantly, sharing content across all those different channels. So mindful of time, let's see if we can't find one really good question. What I'll do, Karen, is looking at all these great questions that people asked, is I will take some time this afternoon and tomorrow morning and try and answer some of these in our blog. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
So, because there is a lot here and we're not going to get to them all. So let's see.
That's the next question. During the previous month, I've lost 21% of my traffic because of Penguin. How do I recover those?
Well, we knew it would happen, and I'm pretty sure that the person who asked this question isn't black hat, you know, because if they were, you probably wouldn't be on this. You wouldn't be on this webinar. So I think that time will tell here a little bit. I think the first thing to do is really dig deep into your site structure and understand why it happened. So are you using too many keywords? You have ill-formed or poor links, or too many links on particular given pages. That's the first thing to identify and the first thing to figure out. And then once you have that identified, you can address it. If it's keywords, then obviously you need to rethink your keywords. If it's too many links, then you really need to rethink your link structure. And I would actually look out into some of the Google forums. And we've seen certainly with some of the other updates, certainly Panda and Caffeine, when companies who are well-intentioned were hammered by a particular change, engaging with Google directly on their blogs or in their forums can really be a great way to get answers. Because again, if you're not deliberately trying to game the system, Google wasn't trying to penalize you, and certainly, they're very open, about these kinds of things. So I'm sorry to hear that. That's a pretty big drop, 21%. So hopefully you can work quickly to figure that out and get it solved, and you'll be the next great case study about how you rebounded, because there's a bunch of them from the other ones too. So with that. Why don't we go ahead and wrap up? I want to just thank everybody for hanging in here. We had a great crowd, great audience. We had a lot of great engagement here, and in the interest of content marketing, we will engage with you directly and like I said, answer some of these questions live on our blog and in other ways. I think Karen mentioned the recording of this will be available for you on our website. And I wish you the best and happy search engine optimizationing, if that's a word. Thank you very much. Have a great day.